Hello everyone, this is Lauren, aka Happy Feet Audios. I hope you all are doing well today. I just thought I'd take a couple minutes to read you one of my favorite quotes from Walt Disney himself, and also to read from my Walt Disney classic storybook, The Story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So without further ado, let's get started. Laughter is timeless, imagination has no age, and dreams are forever. Walt Disney. Walt Disney's Snow White. Once there was a lovely princess named Snow White. She lived in a castle with her stepmother, a beautiful but wicked queen. The queen was very jealous of Snow White and forced her to work as a servant. Every day the wicked queen looked into her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror always answered that the queen was the fairest, which pleased her. Meanwhile, Snow White did her chores and made friends with the courtyard doves. One day a prince heard Snow White singing. He was enchanted by her. The queen saw this and became very angry. Then the magic mirror told her that Snow White was now the fairest in the land. The queen was furious. She ordered the huntsman to take the princess into the forest and do away with her. The next day the huntsman went for a walk with Snow White, but she was so kind and gentle, the huntsman couldn't bring himself to harm her. Instead, he warned the princess about the queen's plan. He told her to run away. Snow White didn't look back. She ran farther into the dark forest, alone and scared. Finally, Snow White came to a clearing. She fell to the ground and began to cry. "What do I do now?" she wondered. The woodland animals watched the girl. Slowly they came out from their hiding places to comfort her. When Snow White saw them, she smiled through her tears. "Everything's going to be all right," she said, "but I do need a place to sleep at night." Some birds whistled for Snow White to follow them, and they led her through the forest. Soon Snow White and the animals came to a tiny cottage. "Oh, it's adorable!" Snow White cried. "Just like a doll's house." She peeked inside. It looked as if no one was home. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes, and everything was covered with dust. Snow White noticed 7 tiny chairs. She decided that 7 little children must live in the cottage. "Maybe they have no mother," Snow White said to the animals. Inside the cottage, Snow White swept the floor while the animals washed the dishes. Before long, everything shone like new. Upstairs, Snow White found 7 little beds. Each one had a name carved on it. Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey. "What funny names for children!" Snow White exclaimed. Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. "I'm a little sleepy myself," she said, yawning. And with that, she sank down across the little beds and fell asleep. In the meantime, the 7 dwarfs marched towards the woods. They had been hard at work mining for diamonds all day. Now they were on their way home. When the dwarfs caught sight of their cottage, they stopped short. Something was very strange. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the door was open. "Something's in there," they cried. "What will we do?" They went inside to investigate and were shocked to find the place so clean. Suddenly they heard a sound coming from upstairs. 7 dwarfs tiptoed up the stairs. When they reached the foot of their beds, they peeked over and saw Snow White asleep. "Why, it's a girl," said one of the dwarfs. Just then Snow White woke up. "How do you do?" she said, surprised to see the little men staring at her. Snow White described what had happened to her. The dwarfs told her she could stay with them. After dinner that night, the dwarfs played music and danced with Snow White. She was so happy that she almost forgot about the queen and her evil plan. Back at the castle, the queen did not know Snow White was still alive. "Magic mirror on the wall, who now is the fairest one of all?" she asked. "In the cottage of the 7 dwarfs dwells Snow White, fairest one of all," the mirror answered. The queen was enraged. She came up with a plan. The queen hurried down to a cave beneath the palace. She used her magic to disguise herself as an old peddler woman. Then she searched for a spell to use on Snow White. "Ah, a poison apple!" she exclaimed. "Sleeping death! One taste and Snow White's eyes will close forever." She climbed into a small boat and headed downstream towards the dwarf's cottage. The next morning Snow White said goodbye to the 7 dwarfs as they went off to work. "Don't let anything or anyone in this house," Grumpy warned her. Then the dwarfs marched off to the mine. From the shadows of the nearby trees the queen watched the dwarfs leave. Then she walked up to the cottage, still disguised. When Snow White saw the old peddler woman, she wasn't afraid. She actually felt sorry for her. Then Snow White noticed the delicious-looking red apples in the woman's basket. "Like to try one?" asked the queen. The birds tried to warn Snow White, but she didn't notice. She didn't know that the peddler was really the queen. Snow White took the poisoned apple and bit into it. Immediately she fell to the cottage floor, and the animals ran to get the 7 dwarfs. The dwarfs hurried home from the mine, but they were too late. The poisoned apple had put Snow White into a deep sleep. The dwarfs saw the queen running away. They chased her through the woods until she fell off a cliff and disappeared forever. When the dwarfs returned home, they built a coffin of glass in the forest for Snow White. Heartbroken, they kept watch over her night and day. After some time, the prince who had heard Snow White singing at the castle rode by. When he saw her, he knew she was his true love. He knelt beside her and kissed her. Snow White awoke at once. The spell had been broken. Snow White thanked the dwarfs for all they had done to help her. She gave each of them a kiss and rode off with her prince, and they lived happily ever after. The end. I hope you all enjoyed the quote in the story, and as always, you are loved, you are worth it, and penguin hugs all around. See you later, guys. Bye.